Hello, I'm ELD, and this is a deck tech for a very spicy list that you may have seen on the channel. Cephalid Breakfast had a bunch of people asking me for a deck list, for kind of a breakdown, how it works. There are some videos showing it being played to some success on the channel, but I wanted to delve in and explain all of the card choices of the current build and talk about a couple of changes that I will be testing in the near future. So this deck, for those unfamiliar, is based around Cephalid Illusionist. This is a Cephalid wizard from Tormod, a 1/1 for 2 mana already, great value stats. But what makes him work is whenever he becomes the target of a spell or an ability, you put the top 3 of your library into your graveyard. So you're actually going to be able to mill your entire deck 3 cards at a time with this guy, and we'll see why that's actually a good thing as we go through these cards. The other part of that card, the 2 and a blue, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and by target creature you control, actually does let Illusionist stand in front of something like a Tarmogoyf, though I've only had that happen. I mean, very rarely is that actually where the game goes. It tends to be a very fast combo deck. So Nomad en-Kor is the primary enabler. 1 mana, 1/1, pay 0 to redirect 1 damage to a creature you control. So you can set up as many redirections as you like toward the Cephalid Illusionist, meaning that you could have a turn 1 Nomad en-Kor, turn 2 Cephalid, and then win the game. And we'll get into exactly how you actually manage that very soon. Shuko, another enabler, 1 mana artifact that can equip for 0. Now, this one cannot be equipped repeatedly at instant speed, which does make the Nomad en-Kor a little bit better, kind of getting around things like spot removal. Shuko is, believe it or not, most often tutored up with Stoneforge Mystic. So Stoneforge, a legacy staple, actually has some great utility in this deck, not only grabbing the Batterskull, which is a great way to pivot off of your combo win, but can grab that Shuko to actually let you just win in a single flurry of cards going into the graveyard. Batterskull in this deck really allows you to sidestep when people bring in a lot of graveyard hate, when people have a lot of kind of hate against your primary combo, you can still just Batterskull them out, which is fantastic. So as we're putting 3 cards at a time into the graveyard, we're going to be hitting some Narcomoebas. And those Narcomoebas are going to enter the battlefield 1 at a time, and kind of gives you incremental advantage. Even if your opponent is sitting on something like a Tormod's Crypt, you can just keep milling and just keep getting those Narcomoebas into the graveyard. And eventually you're going to hit some Cabal Therapies, and that's going to allow you to strip cards out of your opponent's hand. We're talking about Force of Wills, Surgical Extractions, whatever they might have to potentially break up the game-winning play, which is going to be flashing back a Dread Return. So you're going to have Cephalid, possibly Nomad en-Kor, a bunch of Narcomoebas, and you're going to be able to Dread Return by sacrificing 3 creatures to return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. And what better creature to return when you have no cards left in your library than Thassa's Oracle, which is really the whole reason for this deck. I've played Cephalid Breakfast quite a bit in the past, basically as a meme, and the previous kills involved things like, initially it was the Mimeoplasm with Lord of Extinction and Murderous Redcap. So you would bring back your Mimeoplasm from the graveyard. It would come in as a gigantic creature because it would have Lord of Extinction's power and toughness, which would be like, 60 power. And then it would come in as a Murderous Redcap and dome your opponent for 60 damage. That kill was improved with Angel of Glory's Rise, which was a angel that destroys all zombies and returns all humans from your graveyard to the battlefield. That would bring back Azami and Laboratory Maniac, allowing you to tap either of those to draw a card and win the game with no cards in your library. That was a primary weakness of the deck. It was capable of winning tournaments. I actually did win a 4-round tournament with it. I had a bunch of X1 finishes. Once I finally won a tournament with it, I put it away. I figured there was not that much more left to do with the list. But Thassa's Oracle, I think, actually makes this a viable choice in Legacy. It is incredibly powerful. I've had a ton of turn 2 kills, And it's actually pretty difficult to stop. As we said, Cabal Therapy is going to come online as you start milling, which is going to shred a lot of your opponent's options to interact with you. And it is an Aether Vial deck, so you're actually able to vial in your threats, making them uncounterable as well. It's got a couple of copies of Cavern of Souls. That can be on Core, which will hit both the Nomad en-Kor or the Stoneforge Mystic, or Wizard. You can go with your Cephalid Illusionist and your Thassa's Oracle. Either way, Cavern of Souls is going to make something uncounterable. The rest of the mana base is going to be some islands. So we've got Tundra, 4 copies of that currently. Underground Sea, just 1 copy. It'll allow you to cast Cabal Therapy and 1 other spell that we'll get to later on, which is pretty important. A basic island and plains. I'm considering moving up in those quantities and moving to Prismatic Vista. That is a possibility, and I will be testing that in the very near future. From there, we've got a couple of play sets of Flooded Strands and Polluted Deltas. Running all of those islands, and a reason why we're not running 4 Cavern of Souls, for example, is Daze. Daze, a very powerful counter, especially on turn 2, when you're very often trying to go off, and just compresses the game state. It also is good against things like Oko, which can be a problem. They're tapping out on turn 3, and you're potentially going to be happy to either daze that or keep the daze if you're just going to combo off on your turn. Of course, this whole thing is protected by Force of Will. For Force of Will, a staple in so many blue combo decks. And you get a little added protection from Mother of Runes. So she's actually going to allow you to kind of commit to the board a little bit more fearlessly than you would without her. I've seen lists that don't run her, but I really like the ability to blank things like Lightning Bolt and Fatal Push, Liliana the Last Hope, things like that. Mother of Runes just completely trumps the strategy, and especially when you pivot with this deck towards the Stoneforge plan, like let's say that you're not trying to win with your combo, and instead you're going to win with Batterskull and Shuko and just equipping creatures and turning them sideways, Mother of Runes really shines in those situations. So the next question is, how do we find all of these cards? And with some of the finest cards in Legacy, we've got Ponder and, of course, Brainstorm. Brainstorm, incredibly good in this deck. There are a lot of cards, not as many as in the past, but there are cards like Narcomoeba that you're super happy to put back into the deck, and Brainstorm is just at an all-time MVP status with this deck. And one of the cards that really shines with Brainstorm is Lim-D's Vault. So this card is absolutely phenomenal in the deck. I've seen lists that don't run it. They run Recruiter of the Guard. I haven't tested that yet. I'm super skeptical. One, this is blue, so if you do just have the combo, which happens quite frequently, you can just pitch it to force. You don't have to try playing around until you get more blue cards. You can be in a situation where you can force pitching this, maybe have a Daze as well. So the fact that it's blue, very, very useful. And then, of course, for those unfamiliar, what this does is you look at the top 5 of your library, rearrange them, and then you can pay a life if you want to put those on the bottom and do it again. So as long as you have any reasonable amount of life, you're going to be able to stack up a Cephalid Illusionist plus an Enabler or plus some permission, whatever you need, and potentially Brainstorm and do 3 ideal cards. This is a great thing to be throwing out during the end step, and your mana is often freed up because of your Aether Vial, so incredibly potent card, and that's also a reason for the Underground Sea. You cast Cabal Therapy on occasion. More often than not, you're using that black mana for Lim-D's Vault. So we'll jump over to the sideboard, talking about pivoting. Umezawa's Jitte really plays into the Stoneforge plan. It's great versus so many decks, things like goblins or elves. You're very happy to have a Jitte in the deck to be able to kind of play that role. You've got a bunch of flyers and Narcomoebas, which can, of course, happen if you do have your Illusionist milling your library or just potentially casting them. That's actually good enough versus so many decks. Delver is going to have a tough time with this card, and there's so many different angles of attack with this deck that, as long as you can get one of them through, you're going to be totally fine. Swords to Plowshares, a playset of these in the sideboard, again, goes fantastic when you're going to be leaning on all of these kind of Stoneforge-esque plays, be able to clear the way, make sure you're actually connecting. There's a Spell Pierce in here, and that's really could be Flusterstorm. I think Spell Pierce is a little bit better right now because of Graveyard Hate and also Oko. Oko can potentially be good versus this combo. You are trying to get these creatures down. The other side of that is, the first time that I actually played against Oko with this deck, I had an Aether Vial out. They Oko'd it, and I responded by putting in a 1-drop, untapped, cast a Shuko, and then attacked with a 3/3 Elk and a 2/1 Nomad en-Kor and just cleared the Oko. So upgrading these guys to 3/3s when they're only 1-mana spells isn't actually as exciting as it may feel, and getting something like Aether Vial to be able to attack, again, not the best. I do respect the card, which is why I've got Spell Pierce in there, but understand that he's not just game over as he is versus many decks in the format. Once he shows up and starts downgrading your threats, it's pretty bad. And a card that I'm excited to be adding to the sideboard now is Meddling Mage. There are a lot of other hate bears to consider as well. Lavinia, certainly one to think about. It's really like a defense grid plus. But Meddling Mage right now, I think Eureka Tell's actually just one of the absolute best decks in the format, and Meddling Mage probably one of the best ways to combat it. It can stop the Show and Tell from ever being cast, and it can be put in off of Show and Tell to potentially stop a Cunning Wish win. So that card's incredibly strong, and versus really any type of combo deck, Meddling Mage likely going to pull its weight. You're really equipped to be casting it on turn 2, and you've got both Cavern of Souls on Wizard or a Aether Vial to get that guy down uncounterably. And then currently, we've got some Tormod's Crypts in the sideboard. Now that Breach is out of the format, could open that up a little bit. Things like Surgical Extraction or Mindbreak Trap could feel a little bit better. The thing I like about Tormod's Crypt is the ability to draw into it. I'm not a fan of Leyline in a deck like this because it is so explosive. You don't want to be in a situation where you're playing against a deck like Reanimator and you've got like a turn 2 or 3 win, and maybe you want to be able to dig for some Graveyard Hate to slow them down, either find permission or some Graveyard Hate, and instead you have to mulligan it because if you find your Leylines off your Brainstorm or Ponder, it's simply not going to be good enough. I think having cards like Tormod's or Surgical or Mindbreak Trap or Fairy Macabre, those really give you a wider range of potentially keepable hands. When you've got a solid hand that has potential to upgrade, you want to actually have cards in your deck that can upgrade it in the graveyard removal category. So that's just a quick walkthrough of this list. Hope you guys liked it. I think there's actually one more card here, Grand Abolisher. Gonna go ahead and pull him up. So this guy is another hate bear that used to be main deck, and what that guy would do is show up and just ruin the party. So your opponent can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments on your turn, and you cast him off of Cavern of Souls or put him in off of an Aether Vial, and that is just a wrap. They have no interaction at all until their turn, and he just makes sure that you're going to actually just win the game on your turn. So he's been very strong as well. That's it. Hope you guys enjoyed the little walkthrough. I had a bunch of people asking me in comments and private messages to share the list, which is in the description. So if you have any questions, go ahead, leave them in the comments, and I will keep an eye on those. And that is it. All right, stay safe, everyone.